Welcome to this video. So today we're speaking about toxic relationships. I'm not a massive fan of the word toxic. However, let's use the word unhealthy or extreme. And so this particular question that's come in from a young woman, I believe from Canada, is really about her behaving toxically or unhealthily in relationships. So let me read it out and let's go from there. Hi Stefanos, I've realized I can be toxic in relationships. I'm starting to see that I brought out the worst in my ex-partner. Now I'm going to stop there for a moment because there's a lot more to that than just one person bringing out the worst or the best in someone else. There is that mentality, or there is that literal reality of it takes two to tango. So whilst you're triggering or bringing out this intense extreme behavior in your partner, the truth of it is, it's there to also teach them something. It's there to give them something. And it could be there to teach them to set healthy boundaries, to say no to your negative or unhealthy behavior. And just know that whatever we're experiencing, it's not only serving us, it's serving those around us. And that's a massive generalization and blanket statement. There's a lot more to that when we dig deeper into the nuances of that. There's a lot more that's actually happening and transpiring in relationship, particularly intimate relationship, because intimate relationship brings out the best and the worst in us. And intimate romantic partnership takes us to our edges. It brings out our greatest fears, our deepest pains. And it can help us deal with that in the most efficient and open manner possible. And it can also bring up so much pain and so much stuff that we ignore it and we further suppress it and we move away from it. But let me continue reading. I'm self-aware, I'm honest with who I am, I read, I follow positive Instagram accounts, I feel like I do everything I can to try and be the best version of me, yet there's still something missing. That's interesting, right? Isn't it interesting that so many of us sometimes, we seem to be doing all the quote unquote right things. You know, we're reading, we're meditating, we're exercising, we're eating healthily, we're aware of our thoughts and our actions, we're going to seminars, we're looking at webinars, we're taking courses online, offline, we're joining retreats, we're doing all the things, and yet we're still entrenched in habits that are unhealthy, habits that don't actually serve our highest good. Why is that? I'm going to come back to that in a moment. So she finishes off by saying, yet there's still something missing. I have low self-esteem and I think that this is where all of my problems are coming from. Remember, our problems can also be opportunities. Our problems can be insight into who we are and the imbalance that we have within us. What will it take for me to create real change and be a genuine, confident, authentic being? There's some more, but I'm going to stop there and I'm going to address that as well because this is really important. So what does it take for us to be genuine, confident, authentic in our expression? It requires us to clear out our past. It requires us to get very clear and really understand who we are and who we want to be. Now, in order to do that, we have to sift through the clutter that is often our history. We have to move through those painful experiences, observe our limiting beliefs, look at our fears, maybe look at our childhood and say, man, I had some really tough experiences. And those experiences really, really hurt me. And I haven't dealt with the pain and the fear of that. And so how can I begin to shift that in my own psyche and begin to shift that in my relationships? Can I observe patterns in my relationships? Can I look at when I'm pushed to my edge, when I'm feeling really uncomfortable in relationship, is there a common thread with the way I behave? Asking questions like this can actually be liberating because it gives us insight into the unconscious nuances of our behavior. And thank you to everyone that's commenting as well. Much love to you. And so by the way, if you have any questions about what we're speaking to, pop them in the comments and I'll get to them as well. And so I believe this woman really hit the nail on the head when she said, I have low self-esteem. And so this low self-esteem is this sense that we're constantly, consistently over comparing ourselves to others. And to not only others, but other relationships, other circumstances, even our past. We're comparing ourselves to experiences that we had in the past that maybe were so much better than where we are today. And so we feel disappointed in ourselves. And see, this low self-esteem is bred and is perpetuated by this sense of not understanding self, not being self-aware, not having the confidence to step into a version of ourselves and trust that who we are being is not only for our highest good, but is also going to serve others. And the reason, or there are many reasons, but one of the reasons why we remain in that low self-esteem, that comparison mode, is because somewhere along the line we've taken it on for gospel that we're not good enough, that we're not smart enough, that we're not able enough, that we don't offer enough, that we're not good enough in our expression and in who we are. And so we fight to prove consistently, particularly in relationship and intimate relationship, we fight to prove to the world and to our lovers how good we actually are. And sometimes we do that at an any cost mentality, and we lose so much of the goodness of who we are, and we become obsessed, we become obsessive. And not only do we become obsessive, we become so persistent. And that can be translated or interpreted as needy. It can be interpreted as desperate. And if you think about your own life, do you really want desperate energy in your life? Do you want that clinging energy from your partner? I don't think anyone really does. There's an unhealthy balance and dynamic there. So when this person says I'm being toxic in a relationship, she hasn't given any real detail as to what that looks like and what that means. And she's asking, what will it take for me to create real change? And is there something missing? And the missing piece is, see, she has a self-awareness, but there's stages to self-awareness, right? So the first stage is having a broad awareness of our behaviors and where we are. The second stage moves into more detail and depth. So we start to really articulate what is it exactly that I'm being, or how am I behaving that's really pushing people away and making me feel very uncomfortable in my own skin and making me come from fear and desperation, and getting into the details of that. And that's a very confronting stage, and that's a scary stage because it's requiring us, it's asking us, we're standing at the precipice of, hey, I'm about to do something really different here. I'm entering unfamiliar territory. I'm entering the unknown. I'm entering fear. Can I hold myself through that? And can I surround myself with people and be in an environment where I can be supported? And the third stage to self-awareness and building that life is taking action. But you can't take action without having the tools to take action. But you have to be able to understand it first. In my own life, I had a very broad awareness consistently of who I was. And that also worked against me. This insight that I had about who I was worked against me because I used it as an excuse to just remain there. Oh, it's okay, I have insight, I have awareness, but I never took action on changing it. And so I keep behaving the same way, keep getting the same outcomes of disappointing people, disappointing myself, cheating on people, feeling guilt, feeling shame, these cycles of being untrustworthy. But I kept doing the same thing over and over again because I didn't want to change, because I was too afraid of the fear of going into it, until I made the choice to step into a more, I don't want to say genuine version of myself, because I was being genuine from that consciousness that I was coming from, but I chose to step into a different level of consciousness. And then I was able to be more aligned in my expression in the world. And I was able to be confident because I was coming from a place of realness. I wasn't coming from a place of bullshit. I was coming from a place where I could trust myself and I knew myself and I believed in who I was. And so self-worth is so important. When we're taught or we're told by society or our parents or our familial environment that we're not good enough, that we have to fight and fight and fight to be seen, we will carry that on into our adult relationships unless we equilibrate and neutralize that pain, unless we deal with it in our adult lives. We'll carry that in every relationship that we have. And the last part to this question is, also I'd love to know what it was that created change in you. Were you always pretty self-aware? Were you always quote unquote spiritual? I have been self-aware and interested in connectedness and the immaterial and the ethereal and the esoteric for many, many years, since I was a little child. And I never dealt with my trauma and my pain. And so what created real change for me was pain itself. I had to hit rock bottom many, many times. I believe that where we are as a collective consciousness, that's what's required of us. we're required to hit rock bottom to feel that pain so that we can move through it and not have to feel it so intensely over and over and over again. And so for me, it was being in a relationship where I was unfaithful so much in that relationship, and she found out, and it allowed me to look at my actions and look at my behavior as a man, as a human being, and as someone in relationship. Why was I being so dishonest? Why was I hiding? Why was I living in shadows? Because I hadn't dealt with my past trauma, the violence, the abuse, the pain, the difficulty, the rejection, the abandonment, the judgment from my father, from my parents. My father would constantly judge me. I was never enough for him. And so I had to get very real with who I was. There was enmeshment, emotional enmeshment with my mother. I didn't know how to be in relationship with a woman in a healthy way, in a way that wasn't living in the shadows, in a way that wasn't feeling restricted and like my freedom was being taken away from me when I was in relationship, because I hadn't dealt with that past yucky stuff. Yucky, I don't mean to judge it. Yucky as in it was murky, it was dark, because I hadn't brought it into light. And there was so much power in that darkness, but I hadn't dealt with it. So we can always be something, but if we're not taking action on that, we're never fully that. And so dealing with our self-worth and our self-esteem will help us be clearly honest in our worlds. And that's empowering. And Trent, my brother, had a question here. What is the key characteristics of a fully embodied man? Wow, that's a powerful question. So for me, I look to two questions. What does it mean to be good at being a man, and what does it mean to be a good man? I think we have to answer the first. So we have to answer the former first, which means, what does it mean to be good at being a man? And for me, there are 5 tactical virtues, and there are 5 pillars of masculinity. And I believe that when we jump into these pillars of masculinity, when we jump into these 5 tactical virtues, we just grow profoundly, like we grow massively. And what it actually does for us, it allows us to see a version of ourselves and be a version of ourselves in the world that we haven't been able to be before. And I think that's deeply, deeply empowering. And so for me, the 5 tactical virtues are mastery, a strength, courage, connectedness. And so courage, mastery, strength, connectedness, these allow us to be just whole men. They allow us to see ourselves in a way that we've never been able to see ourselves before. And so being this and honor, by the way, ties up those five characteristics in the 5 tactical virtues. And so we've got strength, we've got courage, we've got mastery, we've got connectedness, and we've got honor that ties all of that up. And then we've got the five pillars of masculinity as well, which protection, providing, pursue, procreate, and presence. Now, these are characteristics, and they're also actions in the world. And when we're talking about provide, we're talking more about just the man working 12 hours a day and providing economically for his family. We're talking about something far deeper than that. We're talking about how a man provides for his own needs, how he sees himself, how he opens up to himself, how he provides insight into his life, and how he deals with difficulty and challenge. When we're talking about pursuit, we're talking about the pursuit of the authentic, the pursuit of the real. We're talking about the pursuit of the genuine, the pursuit of what matters to him, his purpose, his vision for himself, and how he then articulates that in his world. So we're moving from unhealthy, toxic behavior in relationship to sort of characteristics of healthy masculinity. So I'm not going to go too much deeper into that, but I'll do another live feed on that, of course. But just remember, people, that if you want healthy relationships, we must do the inner work, and we must clear up our past and get really clear on who we want to be as well, and take ownership, take real, authentic, just transparent ownership and responsibility for who we are in the world. And that is deeply, deeply liberating. We've got another question here, and I want to answer this. Do you believe that once you have been this kind of man, that it's almost impossible to go back into unhealthy relationship habits? You know what? I'm not going to say it's impossible, and I'm going to tell you why. I think it's difficult. Once you have an awakening, I had a very deep awakening. I had a massive, massive awakening. And having that awakening for me, it was truly liberating, and I had to go through the ringer. I chose to experience all of me, the fullness of me. All of me was welcome into my psyche, into my spirituality, into my presence. And so for me, that type of deep, visceral transformation and change, I lost friends, I lost habits, I created new habits, I redefined my purpose, I lost a great deal of wealth. But when we're losing, we're gaining. When we're gaining, we're losing, right? Because it's a choice that we're making. And so I made the choice to be completely honest. And that honoring is part of that characteristic that defines healthy masculinity and healthy humanity, essentially. But is it impossible to go back into unhealthy habits? No, if you're pushed enough to your edge, and you're not solid enough within yourself, you don't know yourself enough, you don't back yourself enough, you're not self-aware enough, you have it's not about having an addictive personality or an addictive nature, but if you don't have the support, and if you haven't really cleared out the stuff of your past, you can easily go back to old habits that are self-soothing, that are unhealthy for you long-term, and very unhealthy for others. And that can hurt others and really hurt you as well. And so we have a choice to continue to do the deep work. And when we're pushed to our edge and we experience new challenges in life, how do you wish to respond to that as opposed to react? Do you wish to come from a more conscious, aware place, or do you wish to come from a reactive, neurological place? What do you do if you haven't hit rock bottom? I don't think every person has to hit rock bottom. I think there's a collective consciousness that is taking us towards hitting rock bottom and then making massive changes and transformations in our lives. What do you do if you haven't hit rock bottom is you just keep exploring yourself. You don't have to hit rock bottom, but don't be afraid of pain and fear as you're on that journey of exploration. Don't be afraid of dealing with the difficulty, and find support and be self-nurturing and self-compassionate. Watch your mental talk, the tonality that you have with your inner voice. Be mindful of that. Power and blessings to you, beautiful people. That went on for a lot longer than I thought, but he had great questions, and I'm really, really honored and humbled to be able to address them and go into them and offer some level of insight. I'll see you again soon. Thank you so much.